Even though there's a 20-year age gap between us, I seriously want to marry her. So please, give me a divorce. When my husband got down on his knees and said those words to me, a laugh unintentionally escaped my lips. All this time, I had desperately tried to make our marriage work. I had prioritized our life together over the possibility of having children. Even without kids, I believed that, as long as we worked hard as a couple, we would be fine. But it seems I was the only one who believed that. I feel like a fool for continuing to trust him. I feel stupid for putting in so much effort just for his sake. My heart has been shattered to the point where I don't even understand my own feelings anymore. But I had to make sure he paid the price for what he'd done. My name is Julia, and I am a 50-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Mark. In this day and age, it's crucial to have a solid retirement fund, which is why we both worked incredibly hard in our respective careers for years. We never had children. We did try to conceive in the past, but it just never happened. I always thought there might be an underlying medical cause, but I was too terrified to face the truth, so I never went to a fertility specialist. Even if we don't have kids, as long as I have you, Julia, I'm happy. Mark used to tell me that, and perhaps I relied too heavily on his words. He had a gentle and calm personality, and he never once blamed me or got angry about our lack of children. Let's just take things at our own pace, he would say. Those words saved my soul more than anything else. That was how much I trusted him. I tried everything: cooking with organic whole foods, reading specialized medical books, doing whatever I could to increase our chances, all with the single-minded goal of enriching his life. But in the end, my efforts bore no fruit, and I reached 50, an age where having a child is virtually impossible. One evening, Mark came home well past midnight. "Welcome home. Were you out drinking again tonight?" When I called out to him, he looked heavily intoxicated. He seemed entirely unaware that I was even waiting up for him and made an awkward face. "I told you that you could just go to sleep. I feel bad making you stay up this late for me," he slurred. Ever since I turned 40, Mark's arrival times had been getting increasingly later. He claimed he was grabbing dinner and drinks with his coworkers every night, always coming home completely wasted. He always told me not to wait up, but I desperately wanted us to have some time together as a couple. Refusing to listen to him, I would rub my sleepy eyes and force myself to stay awake. "I don't want to force you to do this, Julia. I really want you to get proper rest," he would say. "Thank you for worrying about me. But I'm doing this because I want to," I replied, which usually made him fall into an awkward silence. Even if he came home late, even if we couldn't spend much time together, the fact that I loved him and believed he loved me remained unchanged. Our vow to support each other as a married couple remained unbroken. Or rather, that was what I wanted to believe. Still, his habit of coming home past midnight almost every day made me worry about his health. Why did he feel the need to go out drinking every single night? Was he under that much stress at work? Unable to come up with a solution on my own, I confided in a close friend of mine. "Isn't he just cheating on you?" was the ridiculous response I received. "There's no way he's cheating. I trust him completely," I replied. Hearing my words, my friend let out a heavy sigh. She looked me dead in the eye and said clearly, "Julia, your feelings and your husband's feelings aren't necessarily the same. There's a real possibility that you two have been drifting apart for a long time. That's just how marriages can be." Her words were blunt, but I could tell she genuinely cared about me. Was I really that out of sync with my husband? Had our thoughts and values completely diverged? Had the vow we made on our wedding day to support each other through anything already become a lie in his mind? The part of me that wanted to trust him clashed with the part of me terrified that I shouldn't, leaving me completely confused about my own feelings. Seeing my distress, my friend gently told me to take my time and think it over. From then on, I began to observe Mark closely. I didn't want to suspect him, but if something was truly going on, I needed to know. Deep down, I was praying with all my heart that it was nothing, but my prayers were meaningless. His late nights continued. He would stumble through the door completely drunk at midnight. That never changed. At some point, the master bedroom became mine alone, and he started sleeping in the guest room. That, too, was incredibly painful. One night, he was more intoxicated than usual. He could barely walk straight. Because of this, he didn't realize he had left his suit jacket on the living room sofa. Deciding to put it away for him, I walked toward his room. That was when I saw his smartphone lying completely unguarded on his nightstand. I genuinely had no intention of suspecting him. I just wanted to see with my own eyes that his conscience was clear. With that single thought, I picked up the phone. A notification was glaring on the lock screen. It was from a woman named Riley. Tonight was so much fun. Let's go out drinking again soon. By the way, about our trip next month, how about this place? They say they have a couple's discount. The message was undeniable proof that my husband was guilty. The pain was so unbearable that I fell to my knees right there on the carpet. Looking at Mark, who was sleeping soundly, a wave of absolute hatred washed over me. My feelings had been completely betrayed, and to think I had trusted him all this time. My actions after that were swift. I told my friend that there was a high probability Mark was having an affair, and she carefully guided me on what to do next. First, I needed to hire a private investigator. To prove he was cheating, I needed professionals. Through a connection of my friends, I was introduced to a reputable PI firm and hired them immediately. After waiting about a month, they handed me an overwhelming amount of evidence. Just as the text message had indicated, the two of them had gone on a weekend getaway, and the investigators had gathered plenty of photos from the trip. There is absolutely no doubt about the infidelity, the investigator told me. Hearing those words, I broke down crying all over again. I just wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that he still loved me. Even after seeing that notification on his phone, I had held out hope. But the photos the PI handed me made it painfully obvious that my husband was deeply in love with his mistress. The investigator suggested I consult a divorce attorney, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. If I confronted him about the affair, our relationship would be permanently destroyed. It would inevitably lead to divorce, and I just didn't have the courage to take that final step. Seeing me in this state, my friend constantly encouraged me. She took me out to different places to help me regain my emotional strength and distract me from my husband. Thanks to her, I slowly started to feel like myself again, though the reality of his betrayal still weighed heavily on me every day. I had been coasting along, sweeping the reality of his affair under the rug, until one day, Mark, who was unusually sober, asked to speak with me in the living room. His voice was incredibly serious, and my stomach dropped with the fear that he was going to ask for a divorce. Tragically, my fears were spot on. Actually, there's a woman I've been seeing. She truly understands my feelings, encourages me, and is honestly like an angel. Sitting across from me on the sofa, Mark slowly began to talk about his mistress. I've been struggling with our maid, Julia. No matter how hard we tried, the fact that we couldn't have kids gave me a lot of anxiety. In the midst of all that, she got pregnant. It's undeniably my child. Even though there's a 20-year age gap between us, I seriously want to marry her. So please, give me a divorce. I had anticipated this. I knew this day would come eventually, but hearing the words out loud was far heavier than I had ever imagined. I knew I would have to divorce him eventually. I knew I would have to expose the affair. Yet, I had kept running from it, and now, the inescapable truth was staring me in the face. His eyes were more serious than I had ever seen them. It was glaringly obvious that he genuinely wanted to build a life with this other woman. That was how much he loved her. I was brutally reminded that there was nothing I could do. No matter how much effort I put in, no matter how hard I tried, keeping him was impossible. If I had just acted sooner to cut ties with him, maybe it wouldn't have hurt this much. Maybe I would have felt more at peace. Moving past the anger and the sorrow, a laugh suddenly escaped my lips. I didn't even know why I was laughing. My chest was in agonizing pain, yet I couldn't stop the laughter. Mark looked at me with a worried expression. Julia? Even his voice annoyed the hell out of me now. I'm done. I don't need this man anymore. He took all my years of effort and threw them in the trash. There is absolutely no reason for me to keep dedicating my life to him. Once I realized that, my actions were faster than anything I'd ever done before. Fine, let's get a divorce. I had prepared for this exact moment. I walked over to the cabinet, pulled out the divorce papers, and handed them to him. Mark's eyes widened at my decisiveness. Are you sure? You're really okay with a divorce? He asked. What is he even saying at this point? I laughed again. Why on earth would I need to stay with a man who continuously betrayed my trust? Why should I put in any more effort for someone who made all my past efforts meaningless? Don't worry about it. Just sign the papers. When I rushed him, he nodded awkwardly and filled out his section of the divorce agreement. While he was writing, I brought up the topic of the financial settlement. I'll pay whatever alimony you ask for. I cheated, so it's only natural, he said. I fired right back. Of course, I'm demanding it. I doubt you'd try, but if you try to run from the payments, I won't let you off easy. I'll pay it. I'm not that much of a scumbag, he muttered. Not a scumbag? You cheated on your wife of decades. You are the definition of a scumbag. I signed my portion of the papers, confirmed there were no errors, and gave him a brief, "Well, that's that." Then I went straight to my room to pack my bags. Seeing this, Mark looked panicked. "Are you really okay with this?" he asked. I couldn't fathom why I would need to do anything more for a man like this. "With what?" I asked back. He just looked extremely uncomfortable. Ignoring him, I continued packing. "That's right. I should put in a request for some paid time off at work. It'll take time to find a new place anyway. I might as well find an apartment closer to the office." Thinking about my new future, I actually started humming a tune. Mark watched me with extreme unease. The divorce was finalized without a hitch, and I was able to formally demand the financial settlement. Since the PI had also uncovered the mistress's identity, I naturally served her with a lawsuit for damages as well. Not long after, I received a frantic phone call from my now ex-husband. "Hello? Is something wrong?" I answered, genuinely not understanding why he was calling me now. "What the hell are you doing?" Mark yelled, his voice tight, desperate, and laced with intense frustration. I tilted my head, wondering if I had done something wrong. But I didn't have to guess. He spilled everything. Apparently, he was furious that I had sued his mistress for damages. He had agreed to pay his own alimony, but he never expected I would go after her financially as well. His mistress was only in her 30s, didn't have much savings, and paying a massive settlement was impossible for her. Seeing her terrified of what would happen if she didn't pay, he couldn't stand it and called me. He demanded that I drop the lawsuit against her immediately. She had slept with a married man. It would be weirder if she wasn't sued. She destroyed my happiness, so it was only natural she faced the consequences. It's entirely justified that she's being sued. The fact remains that she participated in an affair, I said. I thought you were only going to charge me. Harassing Riley like this is absolutely despicable. The anger radiating through the phone from my ex-husband was unlike anything I had ever seen from him. It really showed just how much he cared about her. "If she's that important to you, why don't you just cover her costs?" I suggested. "I never said you couldn't pay it on her behalf. If you love her that much, you should step up for her." Mark fell dead silent. I knew exactly how cruel my words were. Mark was just an average corporate employee. There was no way he could afford to pay off two massive settlements at once. If he had that kind of financial leeway, he would have done something about it much sooner. "Or what? Are you going to abandon the woman you love when she's in a crisis?" I provoked him. "That's not true," he snapped back. His attitude annoyed me, so I decided to drop one more devastating truth bomb on him. "By the way, did you move out of that house yet?" I asked. "No, I'm not moving out. I'm planning to live there with her," he replied. Just as I thought, my ex-husband planned to play house with his mistress in the home we had shared. But that was impossible. "You need to pack your bags and get out right now. The house goes on the market tomorrow." "Wait, what do you mean?" He clearly wasn't processing reality. His sheer stupidity almost made me laugh again. Out of pity for my pathetic ex-husband, I explained exactly what I had done. First, the house we lived in was purchased after we got married, but I was the one paying the mortgage. Because I paid the mortgage, the deed to the house was solely in my name. Furthermore, after the divorce was finalized, I had a real estate agent come appraise the house while he was at work. The house was officially being listed for sale tomorrow. In other words, if he and his mistress tried to stay there past tomorrow, they could literally be arrested for trespassing. It didn't take long for reality to set in, and Mark lost his mind. "Cancel the listing right now. If you sell the house, where are we supposed to live?" She already terminated the lease on her apartment. "Not my problem. Figure it out yourselves. And don't ever call me again. If you have something to say, speak to my lawyer." "What do you think I hired one for? Please, I'm begging you. Help us. At this rate, I'm not helping you. Goodbye." I had absolutely zero intention of throwing him a lifeline. I cut off his frantic pleading and hung up the phone. My phone rang incessantly after that, but the moment I blocked his number, everything went blissfully quiet. 2 days later, since it was on my way, I drove past our old house. The for sale sign was proudly displayed on the lawn. Mark and his mistress must have packed up and left. It seems the threat of trespassing and police involvement did the trick. I successfully received the settlement money from the mistress as well, leaving me with a very comfortable financial cushion. I heard later that Mark took out high-interest loans to cover the mistress's portion of the settlement. That's how committed he was to her. However, According to a mutual acquaintance, Mark was dumped by her shortly after. It turns out, the child she was supposedly pregnant with wasn't even his. After that, Mark completely lost his spirit. His performance at work tanked, and he was eventually forced to resign. He is now reportedly scraping by in a run-down, dirt-cheap studio apartment. Meanwhile, I have been liberated from him, and am living my life freely. My friend told me how happy she is to see me smiling again. I am endlessly grateful to her for the advice she gave me. Words cannot express my thanks. I'm planning to take her on a vacation soon. She loves the beach, so she's really looking forward to it. For the sake of the friend who supported me from the bottom of her heart, I want to keep moving forward and living my best life. It's your own fault you got locked out. Why don't you spend the night out there and reflect on your behavior? That was the freezing, heartless text message I received from my mother-in-law. There was no way I could survive a whole night out in this brutal winter weather. Why did I have to go through this? What did I even do wrong? I had screamed for help over and over, but my husband showed no signs of waking up, and reaching out to my mother-in-law had only resulted in this insane response. Am I going to die out here? Am I going to die such a pathetic death? I have to do something. Resolving myself, I decided to take action. My name is Lily, and I am a 44-year-old stay-at-home wife. I live with my husband, Richard. We went to the same college and shared many interests, like traveling and cooking. We started dating pretty quickly, and our relationship continued after graduation. For a while, we were both incredibly busy with our careers, but our bond never faded. Although we had fewer dates than in college, the time apart only made us cherish each other more. When he proposed to me, promising to cherish me for the rest of his life, I was so moved I cried. After introducing each other to our parents, we had a grand wedding and officially became husband and wife. But from that point on, my life became a nightmare. Just 2 weeks after the wedding, Richard's personality completely flipped. "You're the wife, so you need to listen to your husband," he declared. True to his word, he despised it if I ever went against him. For dinner, if I didn't cook exactly what he was craving, he would throw a fit. If I didn't prioritize washing his laundry first, I was screamed at. His utter selfishness quickly became too much for me to bear. "Can you please act like an adult and be more considerate? If I have to cater to your every whim, I'm going to collapse," I told him. That only made him explode in anger, hurling terrible insults at me. At first I tried to push back, but I couldn't keep it up for long. Day by day, my spirit was chipped away until I was completely broken. There was no one around me I could turn to for help. The first person I consulted about Richard's sudden change in behavior was his mother, Barbara. My father-in-law had passed away a few years ago, and Barbara lived alone in a house not too far from ours. My own parents divorced when I was young, and my mother had already passed away from an illness, so Barbara was the only family I could rely on. When I texted her saying, "Richard is acting strange," she immediately replied, "Come over." I went to her house, clinging to the hope that she could help. Sitting in her living room, drinking the tea she poured, I explained Richard's recent behavior. "He wasn't like this before we got married. What do you think I should do, Barbara?" I was desperate, clinging to straws. My mental state was already in tatters from his abuse, and she was the only one I could think of. I hoped she might have a solution, but as she listened, Barbara just laughed. "What? That's it? I'm so relieved. It sounds like Richard is finally acting like a proper head of the household." Quote, "I was worried if he could step up as a husband, but it seems I had nothing to worry about." My eyes widened in disbelief. A proper head of the household? That tyrannical behavior? I was so stunned I couldn't speak, but Barbara continued. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with Richard's attitude. You can relax. If anything, you're the one who lacks the proper mindset of a wife. You need to listen to what he tells you. He is the man of the house. After all, nothing wrong? How can you say that? Are you saying I just have to accept his abusive behavior?" I couldn't accept her words. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership of mutual support. There shouldn't be a superior and an inferior. Why on earth did I have to tolerate Richard's tyranny? I wouldn't last a year at this rate. I had come to her hoping we could figure out a solution, but she offered absolutely no help. She just reiterated that he was acting like a proper husband. I realized then and there that I could never rely on her. When we had first announced our engagement, she had smiled warmly and said, "If you ever need anything, just let me know." Clearly, that was just a mask for the public. Since I couldn't rely on my mother-in-law, I knew I had to figure something out myself. I pushed through the days, enduring the misery. One evening, as Christmas approached, I made roast beef and mashed potatoes at Richard's request. It had been his favorite meal since we were dating. Back then, he used to beg me to come over to his apartment just to cook it for him. We could no longer share those happy times, but since arguing with him now inevitably led to him throwing things or screaming horrific abuse at me, I tried to comply with his demands as much as possible. "Dinner is ready," I called out, setting the plates on the dining table. But Richard made no move to come to the table. He was completely engrossed in a video game on the couch. "Richard," I said, "it's ready. The food is going to get cold, so eat now. You can play your game later." Seeing him ignore the meal I had spent hours preparing irritated me, and the words slipped out sharper than I intended. He did not take kindly to my tone. "Who do you think you're talking to? You're just the wife. Seems like you still haven't learned that the husband is the boss of this house," he yelled, his face turning red. Normally, I would have quietly backed down, but that night, I was exhausted and angry. I couldn't just swallow his words. "You're the one at fault for not coming to eat. Why should I ever cook for you again when you act like this after I went out of my way to make your favorite meal? What did you say? It's a wife's absolute duty to serve her husband, and you have the nerve to complain?" As I pushed back, the insults he hurled became viler. But I couldn't back down. Looking back, from the day we got married, I was forced to endure everything simply because I was the wife. Everything was about his convenience. I was just supposed to suffer in silence. I was at my absolute limit. I decided to let out everything I had been holding back. "You never consider my feelings. What kind of husband acts like this? You demand to be treated like a king, but you don't even contribute to this home. Marrying you was the worst mistake of my life. If I knew you were going to turn into this monster, I would have dumped you instantly. You're a total fraud." It was the first time I had ever screamed my true feelings at him like that. That was how close to the edge I was. "I let you run your mouth, and you think you can talk to me like that? Have you no respect for your husband? Why should I respect a husband like you? I'm not your servant. I am a human being with my own thoughts." Furious that I was answering back, Richard suddenly grabbed me by the arm and forcefully dragged me toward the patio doors. "Hey, what are you doing? You can cool off out there and think about what you've done. I'm not letting you back in until you apologize." With that, he shoved me out onto the balcony, slammed the glass door, and locked it. I remembered seeing on the local Chicago news that tonight was projected to be the coldest night of the year. Shoved outside in the freezing winter air with only light indoor clothing, I knew I wouldn't last more than a few minutes. I began shivering violently, curling into a ball as the cold bit into my skin. My survival instincts kicked in. I knew if I stayed out here, I would literally freeze to death. I pounded on the glass door, begging for his forgiveness. "Please, let me in. I'm really going to die out here. Please, help me." But the door didn't open. Richard didn't even come near the glass. Had he just gone to sleep? Did he intend to leave me out here until morning? I would never survive that. I didn't want to call 911 and turn this into a police matter if I could avoid it. Desperate, I pulled out my phone and used my final lifeline. My mother-in-law. "Barbara, do you have a minute?" I texted. Surprisingly, she read it immediately. I quickly typed out that Richard and I had fought, that he had locked me out on the freezing balcony, and that he wouldn't let me back in no matter how much I begged. I pleaded with her to come over and use her spare key to let me inside. I hated having to rely on her, but my life was on the line. Dying over a stupid argument was not how my story was going to end. But the reply I got was unimaginably cold. "It's your own fault you got locked out. Why don't you spend the night out there and reflect on your behavior?" My life was in immediate danger, and she responded with that. A wave of absolute despair washed over me. I sent message after message begging her to come save me, but she simply started ignoring them. I hadn't expected this to happen, so my phone battery was already in the red. Having lost my very last resort, I didn't know what to do. Was I really going to die out here? Over something this stupid? Somebody, please help me. That was all I could think. No matter how long I waited, help didn't come. It felt like hours had passed, though the pitch-black sky remained unchanged. My body was shutting down. I couldn't stop shaking. Tears streamed down my face at the thought of freezing to death. But even the tears felt like ice on my cheeks, pushing me further toward the edge. "Somebody, please, somebody help me. Help!" I screamed with the absolute last ounce of strength I possessed. I didn't care who it was. I just needed someone to pull me out of this nightmare. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Oh my God, are you okay?" It was my next-door neighbor. "Please help me. My husband locked me out on the balcony," I cried frantically. The neighbor quickly realized the severity of the situation. Through the gap in the partition dividing our apartment balconies, she managed to help me climb over to her side. She supported my weight, brought me inside her warm apartment, and immediately wrapped me in blankets, offering hot tea and suggesting I take a warm bath. As her kindness slowly thawed my frozen body and calmed my mind, the terrifying realization of how close I had come to dying hit me, and I broke down sobbing. My neighbor listened quietly to my story and told me, "You should just stay here for the night." Knowing that returning to my apartment tonight could result in more abuse, I gratefully accepted her offer. The next morning, with my neighbor by my side, we contacted the building manager and explained the situation. The manager was horrified but relieved I was alive and unlocked my apartment door with the master key. My neighbor offered to stay with me, but I didn't want to drag her any further into my marital mess. "I'll call you if anything happens," I promised, and thanked her before she went back to her unit. Just as I was about to enter, I ran into Barbara, who was standing in front of my door. "Oh, so you're alive," she said casually, without an ounce of guilt. I didn't even have the energy to argue with her. Using the manager's key, I unlocked the door and walked inside. On the dining table, several empty liquor bottles and beer cans were scattered everywhere. Richard had always been a heavy drinker, and he often drank until he passed out unless I actively stopped him. He must have drank himself to the absolute limit last night. It seemed he wasn't awake yet. As I started cleaning up the bottles and the mess, Barbara followed me in and started talking. "Richard has gotten too soft. If it were me, I would have done this to you much sooner. You need to be taught your proper place in the hierarchy." She sat on my sofa, making herself at home while spewing this garbage. I couldn't hold back anymore. What did she think a human life was worth? I genuinely thought I was going to die last night. If my neighbor hadn't saved me, she would have called the police. It would have become a massive criminal investigation. Do you still think what Richard did was right? Calling the police? You're such a spoiled, weak wife. Your parents must have pampered you terribly. But you are our family now. If Richard or I decide you need punishment, you need to accept it. Did she really expect me to just say, "Yes, ma'am," and agree to that? Actually, a firm resolution had formed in my heart overnight. I was divorcing Richard. I had endured his tyrannical behavior until now. But this escalated to attempted murder. There was no way I was staying in a marriage where my life could be threatened at any moment. I planned to tell Richard the moment he woke up. No matter how much he resisted, I had my neighbor as a star witness. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I felt a sense of relief knowing I could finally put an end to this hellish life. But no matter how much time passed, Richard didn't wake up. Finding it strange, Barbara ordered me to go wake him. Doing as told, I walked to the master bedroom. I knocked on the door. "Richard, are you awake?" No response. There was no sound coming from inside. Thinking he was still deeply asleep, I opened the door. Sure enough, he was sprawled out on the bed. "Richard, how long are you going to sleep? Your mother is here. Get up." I reached out and grabbed his shoulder to shake him. But the moment my hand touched his skin, I let out a scream. He was unnaturally, horrifyingly cold. "Richard?" I yelled, shaking him, but he was completely unresponsive. Panicking, I immediately dialed 911. The previous night, Richard had consumed a massive amount of alcohol. Usually, I was there to act as his stopper, but because he had locked me outside in the freezing cold, there was no one to cut him off. Left to his own devices, he drank until his body gave out. Richard had gone into acute alcohol poisoning and died in his sleep. At the funeral, Barbara clung to his casket, wailing uncontrollably. I just stood there, completely numb, unable to process the sheer absurdity of the reality unfolding before me. I heard he locked his wife out on the balcony in that blizzard. Talk about karma. Imagine being a grown man and not having the self-control to stop drinking. I could hear the hushed whispers of the attendees. They were from people who had always harbored grievances against Richard's arrogant attitude in life. It's a terrible thing to think about a deceased person, but honestly, a part of me thought, serves you right. If he hadn't locked me out that night, this wouldn't have happened. If he had just tried to communicate with me instead of resorting to abuse, he would still be alive. The guests who pitied me came up to me, offering condolences and telling me, "I hope you find happiness now." Using their kind words as motivation, I decided to focus on moving forward. With my husband's death, my ties to my mother-in-law were permanently severed. She was absolutely devastated to the very end. It made sense she had lost her precious only son. I had no desire to pile onto her suffering by bringing up what happened that night. So I chose to let it go. I heard through the grapevine later that Barbara became severely depressed after losing Richard. She stopped eating, withered away, and her concerned relatives eventually forced her into an assisted living facility. Apparently, she resisted fiercely, clinging to her home shrine and screaming that she didn't want to leave Richard, but she is now living out her days in the facility. As for me, I took time to heal while simultaneously looking for a job and a new apartment. Overcoming the gap in my resume from my years as a housewife took some time, but I successfully found a good job and a cozy place to live. I'm now living a fulfilling life on my own terms. When winter rolls around and the air turns freezing, I still remember that night. It was an event burned too deeply into my soul to ever forget. I lost a lot, but I refuse to spend the rest of my life looking down. I want to keep my head up and walk my own path. Please don't attend our wedding. If you refuse, we're cutting ties with you. The fiancé nodded in total agreement with my son's words. The sheer hatred they held for us was palpable, and my heart sank heavily in my chest. What on earth did I do to them? I had only ever treated them the way a mother and a future mother-in-law should. Where did I go wrong? To be told they would cut ties if we came to their wedding, it had to be serious. But I honestly couldn't think of a single thing I had done to warrant this. Naturally, my husband was absolutely furious. We had poured our hearts into raising him, only to be treated like this? This wasn't how you treat your parents. We need to teach them a lesson, we thought. If you treat your parents like garbage, you will pay the price. My name is Helen, and I am a 55-year-old housewife. My husband, Arthur, and I have 2 sons. Our eldest son, Jason, works a corporate job in the city and makes a very high salary. He's the picture of the elite businessman. Our younger son, Kevin, has always been quiet and prefers working with his hands, so he took a job at a local manufacturing plant. When they were little, the brothers were close. But as they grew older and developed their own egos, Jason began to unilaterally despise Kevin. He would belittle Kevin right in front of us and bully him relentlessly at school. No matter how strictly we scolded Jason, his attitude toward Kevin never improved. Recently, Jason announced he was getting married. His fiancée supposedly worked at the same corporate firm. She says she wants to meet you guys, so I'm setting up a dinner. Jason told us over the phone. When we got the call, Arthur and I were just relieved that we were finally seeing our eldest son settle down. Jason explicitly requested that Kevin not attend the dinner. Kevin himself said, "Honestly, that's easier for me anyway, so Arthur and I just plan to bring Kevin home some nice leftovers." The day of the dinner arrived. Jason had booked a private room at a very upscale, expensive country club restaurant. Feeling a bit out of place, Arthur and I nervously made our way to the room, where Jason and a very strong-willed-looking woman were already seated. "Mom, Dad, you're late," Jason snapped. "I'm sorry. We're not used to this kind of place," and got a little turned around. I apologized. "Try not to embarrass me too much, all right?" His words stung, but Jason had always had a sharp tongue, so I decided to brush it off. We sat down, and as we ate the extravagant food, we listened to them talk. "She listens to everything I say. She thinks so much about our future," Jason boasted. "She really is an incredible person. If I had someone like her by my side growing up, I would have reached my full potential much sooner. She's a perfectionist and just brilliant. She's in a completely different class than you guys, Mom." He spent the entire dinner giving a speech about how amazing his fiancée was. The woman, Tiffany, sat next to him looking incredibly pleased. "Oh, Jason, you're exaggerating," she'd say, though she clearly loved it. Jason was completely infatuated, opening his mouth only to praise himself or her. "I'd love to hear more about how you two met." I tried to pivot the conversation. "What's the story? Why would we talk about something boring like that? Just focus on understanding how amazing Tiffany is." Jason immediately shut me down. Even though this was supposed to be a family introduction, it felt more like a relentless sales pitch for his fiancée. It left a very bad taste in my mouth. Arthur looked extremely uncomfortable, and I silently thanked God that we hadn't brought Kevin to this nightmare. I'll say it again. She is in a completely different class than you people. Once we're married, don't you dare try to bully her or treat her poorly. You need to treat her with the utmost respect," Jason demanded. You don't need to tell us that. We have no intention of bullying her. I don't believe that for a second, Jason cut me off. You guys have always favored Kevin and completely ignored me. With your twisted, warped personalities, I find it hard to believe you wouldn't do something awful to her. I was stunned into silence. He was spouting utter nonsense. The only reason we paid extra attention to Kevin growing up was because Jason was constantly bullying him. Kevin suffered from Jason's relentless harassment for years, and as parents, it was our job to try and protect the child being victimized. Whenever we asked Jason why he was so mean, he'd just say, "Because he annoys me," and we could never resolve the root issue. To have him twist that into favoritism was incredibly insulting. But I didn't want to make the atmosphere at the dinner any worse, so I bit my tongue and didn't argue back. The turbulent dinner finally ended, but the problems were far from over. "You guys are getting old. We're going to take care of you, so don't worry," Jason announced out of nowhere. Without consulting us, he had decided that he and Tiffany were moving into our house after the wedding. Tiffany seemed to have fully agreed to this. "You have a son who still leeches off you and refuses to be independent, right? I'm going to have to whip him into shape." Tiffany sneered, making me incredibly anxious. Yes, Kevin lived with us, but that was because he actively helped take care of the house and us as we aged. He was by no means a freeloader. Yet, Jason and Tiffany practically forced their way into our home, taking over the largest rooms and acting as if they were the lords of the manor. "Hey, Kevin, go weed the yard right now. It's the perfect job for a loser who works at a factory," Jason taunted. "Sorry, I have to go to work. You have the day off, right? You can do it yourself," Kevin replied calmly. "Excuse me? You really are an arrogant little prick," Jason spat, constantly picking fights with him. Seeing Kevin handle the situation like a mature adult actually made me chuckle a little, but the situation wasn't so simple. It turned out, Jason and Tiffany had a secret plan. They were trying to drive me, Arthur, and Kevin out of our own home. I discovered this late one night. Arthur and Kevin were asleep, and I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. The lights in the living room were still on. "Hey, when does this house officially become ours?" I heard Tiffany ask. "Just hold on a little longer. We just have to make sure the nuisances leave and never come back," Jason replied. "Once we kick them out, I want to completely renovate the place. This house is so old and tacky," she complained. "Yeah, definitely," Jason laughed. I couldn't believe it. They were plotting to steal our home. I immediately woke Arthur and Kevin and told them everything. Arthur and I were panicking, wondering how to stop them before things got out of hand. That was when Kevin spoke up. "Mom, leave this to me. I have the perfect plan." Hearing those words from Kevin was incredibly reassuring. The plan he laid out required patience, but if it worked, it would completely crush Jason and Tiffany and get them out of our house for good. Arthur and I decided to put our absolute faith in Kevin's plan. Despite the daily friction, life went on, and the date for Jason's wedding was set. They chose a very prestigious, high-end venue in the city. I thought about having it out in the suburbs where you guys are, but the city venue was just too good. "It's a bit pricey, but with our salaries, it's pocket change," Jason bragged. I was irritated, but held it in. They continued to antagonize Kevin, but thanks to Kevin's calm demeanor, it didn't escalate. Once the wedding date was locked in, Jason and Tiffany called us into the living room. That was when they dropped the bomb. "Please don't attend our wedding. If you refuse, we're cutting ties with you." I was completely dumbfounded. Gathering my composure, I asked him, "Are you serious? Why are you saying this now?" "Because your parents absolutely terrify me." Tiffany burst into fake tears. "It's supposed to be my special day, and the thought of being surrounded by people like you makes me sick." Seeing her fake crying in front of me, I couldn't help but feel utterly disgusted. "I'll say it again. If you don't agree, we cut ties. That would be a problem for you, right? I'm the elite son, unlike your useless younger one," Jason sneered, pointing at Kevin. Kevin looked like he didn't even know how to react to such stupidity. Seeing this, my patience completely snapped. "Jason, that is enough. You've been belittling Kevin since you were kids. Why do you treat him like this? You're brothers. Stop treating him like garbage." My outburst immediately shifted their target to me. "You're unbelievable, Mom. You're completely fooled by his pathetic victim act, and you just coddle him. It's textbook favoritism. It was so suffocating growing up in this house," Jason yelled. "That's because you were bullying him. That's just an excuse. Weren't you just jealous because Kevin was a sweet kid?" No matter what I said, Jason refused to listen. Why wouldn't he hear me? All of this was a result of his own terrible behavior. Yet he refused to reflect on it for even a second. Even though he was rotten, he was still my son, and I had always felt a duty to look out for him. But I was done. In that moment, I made the conscious decision to abandon my eldest son. Fine. We will not be attending your wedding, I stated coldly. I truly didn't care anymore. Kevin and Arthur's eyes widened at my declaration, while Jason and Tiffany looked absolutely thrilled. Are you sure about this? You're going to regret it, I warned them. Regret it? Why would we? A wedding without you guys ruining it is going to be perfect. They cheered. In contrast to their excitement, our hearts were completely calm. There was no need for us to force ourselves to attend a wedding and feel miserable just for their sake. In the end, our family did not attend the wedding. We never even received invitations, so showing up would have been pointless anyway. Jason seemed incredibly smug about the whole thing. But little did they know what their actions were about to unleash. Thinking about Kevin's plan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindictive anticipation. Jason and Tiffany successfully had their wedding, but they continued to squat in our house, just as they had planned. They were transferring to a new branch of their firm closer to our town, so they seemed busier than usual. The day they officially transferred to the new office and went in for their first day of work, they came home in an absolute panic. They immediately cornered Kevin in the living room. What the hell is the meaning of this? Jason screamed. When we asked what happened, they frantically explained. On their first day at the new office, while being given a tour by their department head, they walked past a conference room and saw someone who absolutely should not have been there. Kevin. When the department head saw Kevin, he immediately bowed deeply and said, "Thank you as always for your continued partnership." He then introduced Kevin to Jason and Tiffany as the CEO of one of their company's most important manufacturing partners. Jason and Tiffany, who had been convinced Kevin was just a lowly assembly line worker, were too shell-shocked to speak. Here was the truth. Since starting at the factory, Kevin had worked incredibly hard. His dedication and unique problem-solving skills caught the eye of the company's aging founder. Kevin's ideas became essential to the plant's operations, and he quickly earned the respect of everyone around him. Under his influence, the company's profits skyrocketed, and it became a highly sought-after manufacturer. When the founder fell ill, Kevin visited him in the hospital every single weekend. Touched by his dedication to both the company and its people, the founder named Kevin as his successor. Kevin had initially been modest and hesitant, but the founder's mind was made up. With the full backing of the board and the employees, Kevin took over as CEO. Under his leadership, the company grew into an absolute powerhouse, partnering with major corporations nationwide. Kevin's name and face were known among executives at top firms everywhere. That day, Kevin was simply at Jason's company for a high-level executive meeting with their top clients. However, Jason and Tiffany could not accept that Kevin was in a position of such power and respect. "You must have cheated. You've always been a sneaky little rat," Jason yelled, lunging at Kevin. "If you had just told us who you really were, we wouldn't have treated you like that. Why didn't you tell us?" Tiffany collapsed on the floor, sobbing dramatically. It was a pathetic sight. I climbed the ladder with my own skills. That's all there is to it. Why are you so angry? Kevin replied coolly, unfazed. His calm demeanor only fueled Jason's rage. "Don't get cocky with me," Jason roared. But Kevin didn't flinch. "More importantly, there's something I need you to see. I think this is very important information for you, Jason." Arthur and I managed to calm Jason and Tiffany down and force them to sit at the table. Kevin, who had briefly gone to his room, returned and began to explain. "First, take a look at these." Kevin tossed a stack of glossy photographs onto the table. The photos showed Tiffany, dressed highly provocatively, clinging to another man. To be blunt, it was undeniable proof of her having an affair. Jason took one look at the photos and started screaming that it was a lie. Tiffany began shaking violently, clearly having no idea how to talk her way out of it. Since she was going to be my sister-in-law, I decided to do a little background check. I hired a PI. And well, this is what came up. "With this much evidence, you can't exactly talk your way out of it, can you?" Kevin said. Cornered, Tiffany bowed her head in defeat. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Jason, unable to process the betrayal, just sat there staring blankly at the table. This is what happens when you only care about superficial status and don't look at someone's true character. "Nobody is perfect," Kevin chuckled. Arthur and I couldn't help but let out a small laugh too. Jason dropped to his knees in utter despair. The only sound in the room was Tiffany's pathetic sobbing and repeated apologies. In the end, Jason and Tiffany divorced. Jason was nowhere near forgiving enough to overlook an affair, so the marriage collapsed immediately. He sued Tiffany for a massive financial settlement to cover the wedding costs and emotional distress. She panicked, but apparently, her parents bailed her out and paid the debt. However, that didn't heal Jason's wounds. The shock of the divorce caused him to quit his prestigious job. He became a complete recluse, locking himself in his room and only coming out to grab food. But if Kevin was in the room, Jason would let out a pathetic squeak and run back upstairs. It seemed the entire ordeal had instilled a deep, paralyzing fear of his younger brother. Arthur, Kevin, and I had many discussions about what to do with Jason. Ultimately, we reached a unanimous family decision. We were going to formally cut ties with him and kick him out of the house. It was a harsh reality for Jason, but after years of his selfish, arrogant, and cruel behavior, none of us had the heart to forgive him anymore. He had made his bed. A few months later, Jason was forced to pack his bags and leave. He cried and begged for forgiveness until the very end, but honestly, I no longer saw him as family. It was the natural consequence of his actions. With the nuisances gone, the three of us are now living a peaceful, stress-free life. Arthur recently retired, but we have absolutely no financial worries, largely thanks to Kevin's immense success. He is a wonderful son who cares for others more than anyone else, and we plan to cherish him for the rest of our lives. Kevin recently announced that he is getting married to a woman who works at his company. They've been quietly dating for years. I'm so incredibly looking forward to my wonderful son's wedding. Today, my sons are hosting a party for my 60th birthday at my eldest son's upscale restaurant. But it's a total waste of money, so I canceled it. That was the bombshell dropped by my eldest son's wife, Natalie. As the rest of the family exploded in anger, my husband spoke up first. "All right then, maybe I'll just shut this restaurant down." At my husband's shocking declaration, Natalie gasped in horror, and thus began her descent into absolute hell. My name is Margaret, and I am turning 60 this year. My husband, Robert, is a wealthy investor who owns and manages several companies. We are incredibly proud of our three sons. Our eldest, Matthew, manages a high-end, highly rated restaurant. Our second son, Andrew, is currently celebrating record-breaking sales numbers at his real estate firm. And our youngest, Finn, manages a popular vintage clothing boutique. All three are living successful, fulfilling lives, which brings us immense joy. Thanks to my husband's generosity and my own emphasis on keeping the peace, the three brothers have remained incredibly close into adulthood. They gather at our house a few times a month to drink, eat, and catch up. As a mother, there is nothing better than seeing my boys get along. But I never imagined a massive rift would be driven between them. Today was one of their regular get-togethers. Normally, spouses don't attend because it's just a boys' night, but Matthew's wife, Natalie, who is 13 years younger than him, was tagging along today. Matthew and Natalie met when she started working as a hostess at his restaurant. Matthew fell head over heels, pursued her relentlessly, and they started dating. They officially tied the knot last year. Honestly, with such a massive age gap, I was incredibly worried about whether their marriage would work out. But when Matthew told us how they fell in love, he looked so incredibly happy. My motherly instinct took over, and I prayed that this young woman would make him happy. If I had known what her true colors were, I would have opposed the marriage with everything I had. Tonight, I was about to find out exactly who she was. Uch 0 p.m. We're here. We ran into Matthew outside, so we walked in together. "You guys are slow." The three brothers walked in, immediately launching into loud, happy banter. Standing quietly behind Matthew was Natalie. "Natalie, welcome. I've been wanting to see you," I called out to her, noticing she looked left out. "Hi, it's great to see you too. Thanks for having me," she smiled, stepping inside. I set out the food and drinks, and the party started. The three brothers were laughing and talking nonstop, but naturally, Natalie couldn't quite fit into their inside jokes and shared history. I figured the 2-4-year-old must be feeling incredibly awkward. "I was so happy when I heard you were coming today, Natalie. Usually, I'm the only woman here. Let's just chat between the two of us today," I said, trying to make her feel welcome. "Thank you so much," she replied. We started chatting, and I asked her why she decided to join their boys' night today. I just love Matthew so much. Whenever he leaves for these family get-togethers, I get so lonely at home. I was really starting to hate it, she confessed. I felt terrible. I had no idea we were making her feel that way. It's wonderful that the brothers are close, but Matthew is a married man now. I completely lacked consideration for his young wife. I am so sorry, Natalie. You're absolutely right. I feel awful that we made you feel lonely. I immediately apologized. That's exactly why I came today. To tell you all directly, she said. Oh? You're telling me now? I was about to assure her that I would tell the boys to cut back on their gatherings when she suddenly stood up. Hey, sorry, but could you guys stop having these little get-togethers? She announced to the room. Unlike you two, Matthew is a married man. It's incredibly annoying when you drag him away to hang out with you and leave his wife alone. Plus, I'm literally sitting right here, and you three are just ignoring me to talk among yourselves. Can you really not spare a single thought for my feelings? Her point was valid, but her tone was incredibly condescending and venomous. It instantly killed the mood. Hey, Natalie. Okay, it's our fault we weren't including you in the conversation, but you don't have to talk to my brothers like that. Apologize to them. Matthew snapped, furious. Whoa, hey, she's right. We really weren't considering her feelings. Sorry about that, Natalie. Andrew quickly jumped in, trying to de-escalate. Yeah, my bad, Natalie, Finn chimed in. This is so annoying. I'm going home, Natalie huffed, grabbing her purse after saying her piece. As everyone awkwardly started to pack up, she turned around at the door. Oh, right. You two probably think Matthew loves you guys so much, but he literally talks trash about you constantly at home. It's hilarious watching you play happy family while drinking together. You guys are a joke. With that final poisonous remark, she walked out the door. What the hell is she talking about? I would never talk trash about you guys. Matthew yelled, panicking. We all knew immediately that Natalie was lying, but we couldn't figure out why she would say something so needlessly cruel. Yeah, we know you wouldn't, Finn said slowly. She probably just hates us for some reason, even though we barely know her. I'm so sorry. She was completely out of line. Matthew apologized profusely. The gathering ended on an incredibly sour note. That day created a massive rift between the three brothers. Even though they knew Natalie's claim about Matthew bad-mouthing them was a lie, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. What if he actually did? Finn, the youngest and historically a huge mama's boy who worshipped Matthew, was the most affected. He confided in me that he was terrified of being betrayed by the older brother he admired so much. Andrew tried to play peacemaker, saying, I get where she's coming from. It must suck to have your husband hijacked by his family a few times a month, but her attitude was definitely a red flag. I tried my best to mediate, but the three of them didn't gather again after that. When I discussed the situation with Robert, he was baffled. Why did it get this bad? I mean, I sort of understand her being lonely, but as we talked it through, we realized something. Wait, do you think her entire goal was to destroy their relationship? I asked. Did she say those things specifically to turn them against each other? It seemed cruel, but it was the only explanation that made sense. But why would she go to such lengths? I'm going to call her, I decided. I needed the truth. I dialed Natalie's number, asking if we could meet up to talk. Oh, it's the busy season at the restaurant, so I really can't, she brushed me off. Matthew's restaurant was indeed fully booked for the holidays. Well, what about before the restaurant opens? I asked. The restaurant opens at 5 p.m. Even with prep work, her mornings should be free. Oh, I'm super busy with chores at home before work. Plus, I have to be at the restaurant by 4 p.m. to help prep. Meeting up is impossible, she dodged. Fine. Can we just talk on the phone right now, then? I asked. I suppose, she sighed. Look, I feel bad about the other day, but I really do get so incredibly lonely when Matthew goes to your house. And whenever he comes back, he's always in such a good mood. It made me insecure. I started thinking he preferred spending time with his brothers over me. Honestly, I was just incredibly jealous. Hearing her explanation, my first thought was that she truly did love Matthew. My second thought was that she was dangerously possessive. While I was happy my son was loved, her extreme jealousy had fractured my son's relationship, which broke my heart. I knew I needed to be more considerate of her, too. As I was thinking of how to gently respond, she dropped a bomb. So, honestly, I wish you had never even given birth to his brothers. Excuse me? I froze, unable to comprehend what this girl had just said. That's why I wanted to destroy their relationship, she continued cheerfully. If I ruin their bond, Matthew will only look at me forever. My plan worked perfectly. Now I have him all to myself. This wasn't just jealousy. This girl was a sociopath. Natalie, what exactly are you saying? I stammered, trying to process it. I'm saying Matthew is mine now. So please, I'd appreciate it if you, his father, and those two annoying brothers stayed out of our lives forever. Now, hold on a minute. I started, but the line went dead. She hung up on me. I called back multiple times, but she sent me straight to voicemail. I didn't know what to do. I texted Matthew, but he replied, on the train, heading to the restaurant. Super busy. He didn't answer his phone. It was going to be hard to get a hold of him. If I did nothing, we really were going to lose Matthew to this woman. Maybe since he was married, that was just the way it had to be. But my gut screamed that leaving him in the clutches of this manipulative woman was a terrible idea. Before I knew it, I was standing outside Matthew and Natalie's apartment. I know, showing up unannounced like a crazy mother-in-law is a terrible look, but my heart wouldn't stop racing. I rang the doorbell. It was 2:30 p.m. Natalie, who claimed to be so busy with chores, should have been home. But no one answered. Did she go to the grocery store? I decided to give up and walk back toward the main street. That was when I saw something absolutely unbelievable. The sheer shock of it overloaded my brain. As a million different emotions swirled in my head, my phone buzzed. It was Finn. Hey, Mom, he said. I've been thinking. I really hate that things are so weird between us brothers right now. Andrew and I talked, and we decided we want to plan a get-together at Matthew's restaurant. It seemed that while I was stressing out, Andrew and Finn were actively trying to repair the relationship. If we meet at his restaurant, Natalie won't feel left out, right? We won't just be hoarding his attention, and it'll boost his sales, Finn explained. Plus, next month is your 60th birthday. We want to throw you a massive party there. It's famous for milestone celebrations, right? My 60th birthday. While I was thrilled, the thought of my son spending so much money at such an expensive place made me hesitate. You boys don't need to spend all that money on me. Are you kidding? You raised us. It's our job to celebrate you, Finn insisted. Let us throw you a huge party to say thank you. We did it for Dad. Now it's your turn. Moved by their sweetness, I agreed. Matthew already apologized to us. By the way, Finn added, he wants us all to be close again. He promised he's going to go all out for your birthday menu. If my 60th birthday could bring my 3 boys back together, it would be the greatest gift in the world. I put the Natalie problem on the back burner and focused on hoping the brothers could fully reconcile. The day of my 60th birthday party arrived. Andrew, Finn, and I met up and headed to Matthew's restaurant together. Robert texted that he had a business meeting that ran late and would join us shortly. As we walked through the doors, we were greeted by Natalie. Welcome. Oh, Natalie. Hi. But Natalie's face was completely deadpan. I'm sorry, but I canceled your 60th birthday reservation. It's too luxurious for you. What? Canceled? Because it's too luxurious? What the hell are you talking about, Natalie? Andrew demanded, stepping forward. I warned you not to hang out with Matthew anymore, didn't I? And now you want to use our restaurant for a birthday party? This is a high-end establishment. For people like you who are used to drinking cheap beer in a living room, this is way above your pay grade. Go have your loud, obnoxious little party at home like you always do. Without Matthew, obviously, her condescending, mocking tone was the final straw. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was going to expose everything I knew about her right here, right now. But before I could open my mouth, a voice echoed from behind us. All right then, maybe I'll just shut this restaurant down. It was Robert. He had just walked through the front doors. What? Mr. Robert? You're here? Natalie stammered, suddenly looking terrified. She clearly thought my husband wasn't coming, which is why she felt emboldened to run her mouth. Natalie, you are aware that I am the owner and primary investor of this restaurant, right? Robert said, his voice dangerously calm. If you're going to stand in my establishment and insult my family, I will not tolerate it. A 60th birthday party is too luxurious. Well, this building is quite a luxury to maintain. I suppose I'll just shut the whole operation down. And I'll make sure every customer knows that you, Natalie, were the reason why. Yes, the true owner of the restaurant was Robert. Natalie obviously knew this, but she had gotten too cocky. Wait, no, that's not, Natalie stuttered. Suddenly, Matthew burst out from the kitchen. What the hell is going on out here? I spent all day prepping specialty ingredients for Mom's birthday. What do you mean you canceled it? Are you insane? Do you know how much money that food cost? Are you trying to bankrupt my kitchen? No, Fine. I heard you're loud and clear. Natalie. Dad. Shut it down. Matthew yelled, absolutely livid. Wait. Let's all calm down, I intervened. Robert and Matthew were screaming so loud, the veins were popping out of their necks. Yes, Robert is usually very mild-mannered, and it takes a lot to make him this angry, but threatening to close the restaurant was going too far. Look, we can't talk out here in the foyer. Let's go sit down inside. There's a lot we need to discuss, I said, ushering everyone into the main dining room. Since it was early, there were no other customers yet. We all sat down, and Matthew brought out some tea. The tension in the air was thick, but the immediate screaming had stopped. Once everyone had a cup of tea, I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. I distributed the documents and photographs inside to everyone at the table. What is this? Wait, what? As my son stared at the photos in shock, Natalie turned ghost white. Wait, hold on. This isn't what it looks like. It's a misunderstanding. Of course, she was panicking. The photos clearly showed Natalie walking arm in arm with a flashy, younger man. There were photos of them entering a seedy downtown motel, and photos of them making out in a parking lot. What the hell is this, Natalie? Matthew's voice was deathly quiet. The other day, when I went to your apartment to try and talk to Natalie, nobody answered, I explained. As I was walking away, I saw her meeting up with this man. She didn't notice me, so I followed them. They went straight into a cheap motel. But I thought you said you were too busy with chores to talk? I asked her directly. So you used all that jealousy and I love Matthew so much garbage as a cover to hide this? She had purposefully alienated Matthew from his family so that we wouldn't be around and notice her slipping away to cheat. I had immediately consulted Robert, who hired a private investigator we frequently used for corporate background checks. The PI got audio of Natalie and that man talking at a diner, Robert added. Do you know what she was talking about? She was talking about what to do when I die. When you die? Finn asked, confused. Yes. The reason she was trying to cut you boys out of the picture was so that when I pass away, she can manipulate Matthew into leaving the entire inheritance and the restaurant ownership solely to her. She targeted Matthew because he was older, successful, and ran a high-end restaurant. And since Robert was older, she assumed he would kick the bucket soon, leaving the restaurant entirely in Matthew's hands and, by extension, hers. She wasn't a jealous, deeply in love wife. She was a calculating, gold-digging sociopath. That's a lie, Natalie shrieked. I only love Matthew. You have no proof I was after the money. The investigator recorded your conversation, I said coldly. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and placed it on the table. There's no way I'm actually in love with that guy. Natalie's voice echoed from the phone. I was broke and looking for a sugar daddy when the manager at my job started acting like he was in love with me. It was honestly gross, but he's an older guy running a fancy restaurant, and his dad owns the place. I knew there was money there, so I played along. Once the old man croaks, the restaurant is basically mine. This was the second time I had heard the recording, and it made my blood boil just as much as the first time. You called him gross? You're the one who is disgusting. You absolute trash. Andrew roared. Finn looked like he was ready to throw a chair. Matthew, the biggest victim in all of this, was eerily silent. Splash. Matthew suddenly picked up his glass of iced tea and threw it directly into Natalie's face. Are you mocking me? Matthew growled, his voice so low and threatening it sent shivers down my spine. He leaned over the table, glaring directly into her eyes. You told me you needed to push back your shifts at the restaurant so you could do chores at home. What chores? You delayed coming to work so you could screw around in cheap motels. You're pathetic. Natalie was trembling, tears streaming down her face, completely speechless. Call that guy right now and tell him to get down here. If he runs, I will hunt him down to the ends of the earth. Do you understand me? Matthew roared. Why, yes, she sobbed. An hour later, a terrified young man scurried into the restaurant. I'm suing both of you for every penny you have, Matthew told them. And Natalie, you are fired. We are getting a divorce. Natalie collapsed to the floor, clinging to Matthew's leg, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. The man just stared at the floor, too terrified to speak. Andrew and Finn took turns tearing into both of them verbally. As they sat there utterly broken, Robert casually leaned forward. Oh, by the way, Kevin, right? Robert said to the man. The CEO of the logistics company you work for? He's a close friend of mine. I think I'll be giving him a call tomorrow to let him know what kind of employee he has. Please. I am so sorry. Anything but that. I beg you. The man dropped to his knees, literally begging Robert for mercy. Seeing her lover groveling so pathetically made Natalie's face contort in absolute disgust. Get out of my restaurant, Matthew ordered. The two of them scrambled out the door. A few days later, Matthew formally filed for divorce and sued them both for a massive financial settlement. The divorce went through quickly. Apparently, after they left the restaurant, the man screamed at Natalie, "You didn't tell me your husband was a psychopath. I'm going to lose my job because of you," and dumped her on the spot. Natalie, completely alone and fired from her job at the restaurant, tried to move back in with her parents. But Matthew had already informed them of everything she had done. Disgusted, her parents disowned her. I heard she is now working grueling shifts at a local packing warehouse, desperately trying to pay off the settlement money while crying about how her life was ruined. As for us, after the garbage was taken out that day, we stayed at the restaurant. Matthew wiped his tears, went back into the kitchen, and cooked the most incredible, extravagant meal for my 60th birthday. To be honest, after all that drama, I barely had an appetite. But I didn't want the food to go to waste, and my boys insisted on celebrating me. I'm so sorry, guys, Matthew told his brothers as we ate. I kicked that crazy woman out. No more fighting between us, okay? The three brothers finally made up. Looking ahead, I know Robert and I will continue to watch over our three wonderful sons.